Chapter 3, Common Relationship Challenges. Lesson 3.1, Identifying Toxic Patterns. Introduction to Toxic Relationship Patterns. Even the strongest couples can fall into some pretty nasty relationship habits from time to time. These toxic patterns can erode trust, shut down communication, and kill emotional connection faster than you'd think. The good news? Once you spot them, you can take action to break the cycle and avoid lasting damage. In this lesson, we're diving into the most common toxic patterns that creep into relationships, and more importantly, how to break free from them before they take over. Common toxic patterns in relationships. Escalation. Ever had a small disagreement explode into a full-blown argument before you even realized it? That's escalation at work. Instead of calmly talking things through, both partners dig in, get defensive, and things spiral out of control. Invalidation. Invalidation happens when one partner brushes off or belittles the other's feelings. Sarcasm, criticism, or just flat out ignoring your partner's emotions can leave them feeling resentful and disconnected. Withdrawal. This is when one person decides to check out, emotionally, physically, or both. Avoiding conflict might seem like the easy way out, but it only makes things worse by creating more emotional distance. Negative interpretation. Assuming the worst about your partner's intentions? This one's a relationship killer. Miscommunication thrives when you start seeing everything they say or do in the worst possible light, leading to defensiveness and mistrust. How to break free from toxic patterns. If you've spotted any of these behaviors in your relationship, don't worry, there are ways to turn things around. Here's how. 1. Awareness. Step 1 is recognizing that these patterns are there. Take a good, honest look at your behavior and ask yourself if any of these toxic patterns are playing a role in your relationship. 2. Communicate constructively. Instead of throwing blame around, try using I statements like I feel or I need. It makes a huge difference when you express yourself without pointing fingers. 3. Practice validation. You don't always have to agree, but you do need to validate each other's feelings. Let your partner know their emotions are real and worth listening to, even if you see things differently. 4. Stay engaged. Resist the urge to withdraw when conversations get tough. Stay present, even when it's uncomfortable. It's better to face issues head-on than to let them simmer and grow. 5. Challenge negative assumptions. Catch yourself when you're assuming the worst. Instead of jumping to conclusions, ask for clarification. You'll be surprised how much easier it is when you give your partner the benefit of the doubt. 6. Seek help if needed. If the toxic patterns just won't quit, it might be time to get some outside help. Couples therapy or counseling can be a game changer, offering fresh perspectives and tools to tackle the issues. Reflection exercise. Take a few moments to think about your relationship and see if any toxic patterns are lurking. Ask yourself, are there conflicts that seem to escalate out of nowhere? How do you usually respond to your partner's feelings? Do you acknowledge them or shut them down? Do either of you tend to check out or avoid difficult conversations? Are you quick to assume the worst about your partner's actions or words? By identifying and addressing these patterns, you can take the first steps toward building a healthier, more supportive relationship. Lesson 3.2, Escalation. How small arguments spiral. What is escalation? Ever had a small disagreement that somehow exploded into a full-on argument where you don't even remember how it started? That's escalation in action. It happens when a minor issue snowballs into something way bigger, and before you know it, hurtful words are flying, and both partners are left feeling frustrated and resentful. It's a pretty common pattern in relationships that lack solid conflict resolution skills. Escalation is usually driven by defensiveness, miscommunication, or that all too common desire to win the argument instead of actually resolving the problem. The good news? You can learn to recognize when things are heating up and stop escalation in its tracks, which is essential for keeping your relationship healthy. Key characteristics of escalation. Rising emotions. As the argument escalates, emotions shoot through the roof. Both partners start feeling angrier, more frustrated, or just plain upset. Blame and criticism. Instead of focusing on the issue, you start blaming and criticizing each other, which only makes things worse and creates a hostile environment. Defensiveness. Feeling attacked? You're not alone. When blame is tossed around, it's natural to get defensive, which often leads to counterattacks or shutting down completely. Neither helps the situation. Lack of resolution. Here's the kicker. When things escalate, you rarely solve the original problem. Instead, both partners walk away feeling hurt, disconnected, and with nothing resolved. How to prevent escalation. Stopping escalation before it gets out of hand takes practice, but it's totally doable. Here are some ways to keep a minor disagreement from spiraling into a full-blown argument. 1. Stay calm. If you feel your emotions ramping up, pause. Take a deep breath, step away for a few minutes, or take a mental break. This will help you stay grounded and keep things from getting out of control. 2. Focus on the issue. Stick to the issue at hand. Don't drag in past grievances or unrelated problems. It'll only make the argument bigger than it needs to be. 3. Use I statements. Instead of blaming your partner with you statements, express how you feel with I statements. For example, say, I feel hurt when, instead of you always. This shifts the focus from blaming to sharing how you feel. 4. Listen actively. It's easy to get caught up in defending yourself, but try to really listen to your partner's perspective without interrupting. Active listening builds understanding and reduces the chance of escalation. 5. If things are getting too heated, hit pause. Agree to take a break and come back to the discussion when you've both cooled down. This prevents things from escalating in the heat of the moment. Reflection exercise. Think back to recent conflicts you've had in your relationship. Ask yourself, what triggered the argument to escalate? How did both you and your partner handle the rising emotions? What could you do differently in future disagreements to stop escalation before it gets out of hand? By reflecting on these questions, you can spot where escalation tends to happen and use these strategies to keep your conflicts constructive and solution-focused. Lesson 3.3. Invalidation. Recognizing disrespectful communication. What is invalidation? Invalidation is when one partner dismisses, belittles, or undermines the other's feelings, thoughts, or experiences. And it can be sneaky. Sometimes it shows up as a subtle eye roll, a sarcastic comment, or simply ignoring your partner's concerns. Other times, it's more obvious, like directly criticizing their feelings or telling them they're overreacting. This type of communication can slowly erode a relationship, creating emotional distance, resentment, and a breakdown of trust. If your partner feels like their emotions aren't being acknowledged or respected, it becomes harder and harder to keep that emotional connection strong. Key characteristics of invalidation. Dismissing emotions. Phrases like, you're overreacting, or it's not that big of a deal, minimize your partner's feelings, making them feel like their emotions aren't valid. Sarcasm or mocking. Throwing in some sarcasm or mocking how your partner feels. That's a fast track to making them feel small and unheard. Ignoring concerns. When one partner consistently ignores or avoids addressing the other's concerns, it sends the message that their feelings just don't matter. Minimizing experiences. Downplaying what your partner is going through, like saying it's not that bad, or you're making too much out of this, can make them feel isolated and frustrated. How to avoid invalidation. Creating an environment where both of you feel heard, seen, and respected is crucial for a healthy relationship. Here's how to avoid falling into the invalidation trap. 1. Practice empathy. Step into your partner's shoes. Even if you don't completely agree with their perspective, try to understand where they're coming from. A little empathy goes a long way in keeping that connection alive. 2. Acknowledge feelings. A simple, I can see why you're upset, or I understand this is important to you, can work wonders. You don't have to agree, but showing that you value their feelings helps build trust. 3. Avoid judgment. Resist the urge to label your partner's emotions as right or wrong. Just because you wouldn't feel the same way doesn't mean their feelings aren't valid. 4. Sometimes the best way to validate your partner's experience is by simply listening, without cutting them off or offering solutions right away. 5. Use open-ended questions. Encourage your partner to share more by asking questions like, can you tell me more about how you're feeling? Or, What do you think would help? This shows you're invested in understanding them better. Reflection exercise. Take a moment to think about your recent interactions with your partner. Reflect on these questions. Have there been times when you accidentally dismissed or minimized your partner's feelings? How did your partner react when their emotions were dismissed or overlooked? What can you do to create a more validating environment in your relationship going forward? By practicing validation, you'll strengthen your emotional connection and build a deeper sense of trust in your relationship. All right, that wraps up this lesson. Before we jump into the next one, I just want to quickly remind you about our premium course and the amazing value it offers. Got a burning question about your relationship that's specific to your situation? With the premium course, you can submit up to 5 personal questions and receive customized answers tailored to your needs. It's like having a personal coach in your back pocket. Get the premium course today at freemarriagecourse.com. That's freemarriagecourse.com. Now, back to the course. Lesson 3.4, Withdrawal and Avoidance. Managing Conflict Avoidance. What is withdrawal? Withdrawal happens when one partner decides to shut down, either emotionally or physically, in response to conflict or uncomfortable situations. Instead of talking things out, they might choose to avoid the issue completely, whether by leaving the room, giving the silent treatment, or emotionally checking out of the relationship. It's often a way of protecting oneself from the discomfort of conflict, but unfortunately, it usually makes things worse. Avoiding a problem doesn't make it disappear. It just buries it for later, where it'll come back bigger and more complicated. Sound familiar? Key characteristics of withdrawal. Silent treatment. One partner goes radio silent, refusing to talk as a way of dodging the conflict. This only deepens the emotional divide and keeps the issue unresolved. Physical distance. Leaving the room or physically distancing yourself during a disagreement can make your partner feel abandoned or unsupported. Emotional detachment. Instead of talking things out, the withdrawing partner might emotionally shut down, becoming unresponsive or disinterested in the relationship. Avoiding difficult conversations. Tough conversation on the horizon? The withdrawing partner might deflect, change the subject, or dodge engaging altogether. Challenges of withdrawal. Withdrawal is one of those behaviors that can silently wreak havoc on a relationship. Here's why. Unresolved issues. Conflict avoidance means nothing ever gets fixed. Those unresolved problems pile up, leading to frustration, resentment, and emotional distance. Lack of emotional intimacy. Withdrawing creates a wall between partners. The one who's left behind often feels rejected, making it hard to maintain emotional closeness. Escalation of conflict. While it might seem like withdrawal is a way to avoid arguments, it actually makes things worse in the long run. Problems don't just go away, they fester and grow, often turning into bigger conflicts later on. How to address withdrawal in relationships. Breaking the cycle of withdrawal takes some effort from both partners, but it's essential for maintaining a healthy relationship. Here's how to start. 1. Acknowledge the behavior. The first step is recognizing that withdrawal is happening. Both partners need to be aware when one of them is emotionally or physically checking out during conflict. 2. Create a safe space for discussion. Withdrawal often happens because one partner feels unsafe or uncomfortable with conflict. Building a space where both partners feel free to express themselves without judgment can reduce the urge to withdraw. 3. Take breaks, but stay engaged. If things are getting too heated, it's okay to step away for a short break. Just make sure you agree on a time to come back and actually address the issue. 4. Practice vulnerability. Withdrawal often stems from fear or vulnerability. Encourage open, honest conversations about feelings, even when it's uncomfortable. This can prevent the need to shut down. 5. Seek professional help if needed. If withdrawal is a persistent problem, it might be time to consider couples therapy or counseling. A professional can offer tools to manage conflict and improve communication. Reflection exercise. Take a moment to reflect on any recent conflicts or tough situations in your relationship. Ask yourself, have you noticed yourself or your partner withdrawing during these moments? How does withdrawal affect your ability to resolve conflicts and stay emotionally connected? What steps can you take to create a safer environment for open communication? By addressing withdrawal and staying engaged in difficult conversations, you can build a stronger, more connected relationship. Lesson 3.5: Negative Interpretation: How Assumptions Harm Relationships. What is negative interpretation? Negative interpretation is when one partner constantly assumes the worst about the other's actions or intentions. Instead of giving their partner the benefit of the doubt, they see even neutral or positive behaviors in a negative light. This pattern of thinking can really mess with trust and communication, creating an emotional distance that makes it tough for the relationship to thrive. For example, if a partner assumes their spouse is being intentionally hurtful or neglectful, when that's not even close to the truth, things can go south fast. Over time, negative interpretation leads to defensiveness, frustration, and a lot of unnecessary drama. Key characteristics of negative interpretation: assuming the worst. Instead of believing that their partner means well, someone stuck in this pattern tends to assume the worst. This can lead to feelings of betrayal or disappointment, even if the partner hasn't done anything wrong. Misreading neutral behaviors. A partner being quiet after a long day at work, that could easily be misinterpreted as disinterest or anger, when in reality, they're just tired. Frequent mistrust. Negative interpretation fuels a cycle of mistrust and suspicion, even when there's zero evidence to back it up. Defensiveness. The partner who's constantly being misinterpreted may start to feel defensive or closed off, which makes it even harder to communicate effectively. How to overcome negative interpretation. Breaking free from negative interpretation takes some work, but it's possible with better communication and trust. Here's how to stop jumping to the worst conclusions. 1. Challenge your assumptions. Before assuming the worst, pause and ask yourself if your reaction is based on facts or just feelings. Try to look at the situation objectively and challenge those assumptions. 2. Give the benefit of the doubt. Remember, your partner probably has good intentions. Instead of assuming the worst, give them the benefit of the doubt and ask for clarification if something seems off. 3. Communicate clearly. If something is bothering you, talk about it. Let your partner know how you're feeling and ask for their perspective. Open communication stops those misunderstandings in their tracks. 4. Practice empathy. Try to see things from your partner's point of view. Empathy goes a long way in helping you interpret their actions in a more positive light. 5. Seek reassurance. It's okay to feel unsure sometimes. If you're feeling insecure, ask your partner for reassurance. Let them know what's on your mind and ask for their support to work through it. Reflection exercise. Take some time to think about your relationship and ask yourself these questions. Do you find yourself assuming the worst about your partner's intentions? How does this affect your ability to communicate openly and honestly? What steps can you take to challenge those assumptions and start giving your partner the benefit of the doubt? By working on overcoming negative interpretation, you can build a relationship grounded in trust, understanding, and better communication. Lesson 3.6: Strategies to avoid toxic patterns. Recognizing and avoiding toxic patterns. Toxic patterns can sneak into any relationship, like uninvited house guests that just won't leave. But don't worry. The key to keeping your partnership healthy is spotting these patterns early and taking action before they settle in. If you can identify habits like escalation, invalidation, withdrawal, and negative interpretation, the greatest hits of relationship trouble, you'll be better equipped to kick them out of your relationship before they overstay their welcome. In this lesson, we'll break down some simple strategies to avoid these toxic patterns and create a healthier, more fun dynamic with your partner. Because love shouldn't feel like a battlefield. Key strategies for avoiding toxic patterns. 1. Stay mindful of your behavior. Ever catch yourself in the middle of an argument and think, wait, why am I so mad about socks on the floor? Staying aware of your own behavior is step 1. Regularly check in with yourself and reflect on how you're communicating with your partner. Are you slipping into negative patterns? It's all about self-awareness, people. 2. Practice self-regulation. When emotions start rising like the temperature on a hot day, it's time to cool down. Try self-regulation techniques like deep breathing, not to be confused with sighing dramatically, or taking a break before you say something you'll regret. Managing your emotions keeps conversations from turning into all-out verbal ping-pong matches. 3. Prioritize communication. Look, no relationship ever thrived on guessing games or reading minds. Honest and open communication is where it's at. Make it a habit to share how you're feeling, what you need, and any concerns you have. No cryptic hints or passive-aggressive comments, just clear, direct conversations. 4. Validate your partner's feelings. Even if you don't totally agree with what your partner's saying, give their feelings the respect they deserve. Saying something like, "I can see why that upset you," goes a long way. Validation doesn't mean you're wrong and they're right. It just means you're showing that their emotions matter to you. 5. Seek professional support if needed. Sometimes, even after all your best efforts, those toxic patterns stick around like gum on your shoe. If that's the case, it might be time to call in the pros. A therapist or counselor can help you both figure out what's going wrong and offer fresh tools to fix it. No shame in getting a little extra help. Reflection exercise. Grab your thinking cap and reflect on these strategies. Have any toxic patterns crept into your relationship? If so, what are they? Which strategies can you put into action right away to keep those patterns from taking over? How can you and your partner team up to create healthier, more positive communication habits? By staying mindful and making these strategies part of your relationship toolkit, you can keep toxic patterns at bay and build a partnership based on mutual respect, understanding, and maybe even some laughter along the way. Hope you're getting a lot out of the course so far. If you're the kind of person who likes to take notes and dive deeper into the material, you'll love the 68-page ebook that comes with the premium course. It's designed to help you follow along with the audio, complete exercises, and revisit key sections whenever you need. Grab your copy by purchasing the premium course at freemarriagecourse.com. That's freemarriagecourse.com. So that's it for Chapter 3. In Chapter 4, we're going to talk about self-responsibility and why it's crucial to a successful relationship. See you there.